Welcome to episode 7 of the Dragonheart Princess. The sun had barely risen when Liora awoke, still nestled against Arion's warm scales. The floating meadow around them glowed softly with tiny flowers that opened only in the early dawn. A gentle breeze passed through, carrying a sweet, calming scent, but Liora couldn't shake the strange heaviness in the air. Her mark flickered faintly, not bright like yesterday, but uneasy, like a heartbeat skipping out of rhythm. Arion sensed it too. He lifted his head, ears perking, sparks buzzing quietly across his wings. Something was wrong somewhere in Skydale. Liora sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. The memory of yesterday, the sanctuary, the ancient dragon spirit, the fierce sky battle flashed in her mind like bright lightning. She touched her glowing mark and whispered, "Do you feel it too, Arion? Something's pulling us again." Arion nodded, his small body tense. The wind shifted, and a distant rumble echoed from beyond the mist. Not thunder, something deeper, heavier. Liora stood and took a shaky breath. "Let's find out." They launched into the sky, flying across floating islands bathed in early morning glow. As they soared, Liora noticed something unsettling. The clouds were darker than usual, gathering unnaturally around the island chain to the east. Birds were flying in the opposite direction, their cries sharp and frantic. Even the air felt charged, prickling against her skin. When they reached the edge of the cloud-lined valley, the sight below made Liora gasp. The entire valley was covered in thick, restless fog, much darker than any mist she had seen. It swirled violently, rising and falling like a living creature. The ground shook as faint tremors rolled through the floating cliffs, making rocks crumble into the abyss below. Arion growled softly, wings stiffening. Liora whispered, "I think something is trapped down there." As they descended, the fog thinned enough for Liora to see silhouettes moving beneath it. Not creatures, people. A small group of villagers from a nearby island were huddled together, trying to escape to higher ground but slipping on the shaking cliffs. Liora gasped and pointed, "We have to help them." Arion dove down swiftly. Liora called out to the villagers, guiding them as the ground cracked beneath their feet. A giant piece of rock broke away, and a young boy almost fell, but Arion swooped underneath, catching him safely. Liora reached down, pulling him up. His face was pale with fear. "Please, the island is sinking," he cried. Her heart jumped. Floating islands didn't sink, ever. Something was terribly wrong. Liora helped the villagers climb onto a stable ridge. She knelt beside them. "What happened? Why is the ground shaking like this?" An old woman, clutching her chest, whispered. Something awakened beneath the valley. Something ancient. The darkness stirred, and the land began to fall apart. Before Liora could respond, the ground trembled again, harder than before. A deep, echoing roar erupted from beneath the fog. A roar colder and sharper than any dragon's. The villagers flinched. Leora's blood ran cold. Then the fog split open. From the depths rose a massive creature made of moving shadows, a colossal obsidian serpent with glowing red eyes. Its body twisted and rippled like smoke, rising higher and higher until it towered above the floating cliffs. Liora froze, breath caught in her throat. "What is that?" The villagers screamed and fled. Arion growled loudly, wings sparking, but even he trembled at the sight of the creature. Its roar shook the sky, sending cracks splintering across nearby islands. The shadow serpent lunged toward Liora, and Arion instinct kicked in. "Fly!" Liora shouted, and Arion shot upward just as the creature's smoky jaws snapped inches below them. Dark mist trailed behind it like poisoned vines, trying to wrap around them. The chase became a frantic spiral around the collapsing valley. Liora clung to Arion, her heart pounding. She felt the mark on her hand pulse, not with power, but warning. Her mind raced. The serpent wasn't just attacking, it was searching for her. Suddenly, the Shadow Rider appeared atop a nearby floating peak, watching the chaos with a chilling stillness. The wyvern beside him hissed. The rider raised his hand, and the serpent turned its massive head toward Liora, as if obeying his command. Realization hit her. "He controls it," she whispered. The serpent surged upward. Arion barely dodged, spiraling through a cluster of falling boulders. Liora felt panic clawing at her chest. She lifted her hand, trying to summon the golden lightning she used yesterday, but only faint sparks appeared, weak, unstable. Her powers weren't responding. The Shadow Rider mocked her with a cold, echoing voice. "So the Dragonheart awakens, yet still doesn't understand her place." His words chilled her. Liora clenched her fist. She wasn't going to let fear win. Arion, sensing her determination, let out a defiant roar. Together, they dove downward, weaving between broken cliffs to loose the serpent. But the creature followed relentlessly, smashing through stone like dust. Each strike shook the entire valley, sending floating chunks drifting dangerously. They landed behind a tall crystal spire, catching their breath. Liora pressed her forehead to Arion's. We have to think. We can't fight that thing head on. We need to use the bond, not force. Arion blinked slowly, sparks buzzing across his wings as if understanding. Liora placed her palm on his belly. She closed her eyes, focusing on the warm thrum inside her, the heartbeat that echoed his. Slowly, their breaths synced. The bond glowed faintly. Liora felt Arion's fear, his strength, his trust. Their magic pulsed together like a growing flame. The ground trembled again as the serpent drew near. Liora opened her eyes. Let's try this. Arion burst from behind the spire, rising fast. The serpent lunged, but Liora lifted her glowing hand. This time, instead of lightning, a radiant shockwave rippled outward, gentle but powerful. It passed through the serpent, making its smoky body flicker violently. The creature roared in confusion. Liora gasped. It works. Light weakens it. Arion gathered lightning in his chest. Liora prepared another wave. Together, they unleashed light and storm energy on the serpent as they circled it in a dizzying spiral. The creature thrashed, its body unraveling into smoke. The Shadow Rider's voice thundered angrily. Enough! He raised both his hands, and the serpent's body hardened, growing sharper and more solid. Liora felt her heartbeat spike. He was strengthening it, forcing it to stay whole. The serpent surged after them again. Arion strained, wings trembling. Leora's magic flickered from exhaustion. She whispered, just a little more. They flew higher, toward a hovering shard of island covered in crystals. Arion banked sharply, dodging the serpent's snapping jaws. Liora slammed her palm toward the ground, sending a final burst of golden energy into the crystal surface. The crystals absorbed the light, then reflected it outward in a blinding explosion. The serpent howled, its entire form shaking apart. One final roar, then its huge shadowy body burst into thousands of drifting wisps that faded into the clouds. Silence, Arion floated weakly, wings drooping. Liora stroked him gently, exhausted. But before she could breathe, the Shadow Rider's voice echoed through the sky. You grow stronger, but remember, girl, you are still far from ready. He vanished into swirling darkness, along with the wyvern. The clouds slowly cleared. The valley stabilized. The villagers re-emerged from hiding, some crying with relief as the ground stopped shaking. Liora and Arion landed softly. The little boy from earlier ran up, eyes full of awe. You saved us. Liora smiled tiredly. We just did what we had to. But deep inside she felt the weight of what had happened. The Shadow Rider was growing more powerful. The creatures of darkness were rising. She looked at her glowing hand, then at Arion. We need to get stronger. Much stronger, she whispered. Arion nudged her gently, sparks flickering like a promise. And together, they flew toward the horizon, where new dangers and new truths waited to be discovered.